the only legislative council which had reservation on religious grounds. Sikhs had seats.
Sheikh Abdullah in 1972, after his prolonged incarceration, when he was to come back and form the government, they entered into an agreement, Sheikh Abdullah and Mrs. Gandhi. And it's interesting because that agreement provided for the fact that there'd be no question of you asking for an abrogation of 370 clause 3.
One is consent of the people was not respected.
My lords, the reason why I'm showing these distinctions, and my lord is very correct, but the reason why I'm showing this is that there was a method, an intention on how to keep, one, how to recognize the state, two, how to bring the diversity within the state together.
Get a representative character from a base level, sir.
Yes, and diversity of regional representation, the only legislative council which had reservation on religious grounds. Sikhs had seats. Very unique. So there was an understanding of the people who knew the area best, that there would be a certain regional representation to hold together Jammu, Kashmir and Ladakh. There is no other legislative council which is thinking through regions, which is thinking through minority representations in this form. So when you take that area and divide it up and chop it up into two union territories, you take away all representation from Ladakh.
Be equal. Today, there is no constituent assembly. After 57, there is no such agency on the horizon. If it has to be contrived, it will either be through political will, as they say, the hour, if I may paraphrase, the hour may produce the means. Else, whether it can be contrived in terms of the existing constitution, I do not think Article 368 will apply. Because the terms of Article 370, this article and Article 1 will apply. So the limitations are there in the article itself, but whether it applies or not, that's not what has been done. Some thought and sensitivity and democratic stirrings are required to think of an agency which could express this will. But one thing is clear, it cannot be any agency of the centre. Cannot be, because a democratic pact is between two power centers of sovereignty. And this is not as though they're setting up their wills against Indian sovereignty. As part of Indian sovereignty, there's a checks and balances system. There's the state and the centre. So how can the centre exercise the power which has been given to the state? On the face of it, it's absurd.
Rajasthan. Second, states that ultimately formed a constituent assembly, and there are quite a few of those. There's Mysore, Jammu and Kashmir, Junagadh, Saurashtra and Travancore and Cochin. So because this question of constituent assembly came up, your lordships need to know that there were these four states which had constituent assemblies. But how three of them decided to go ahead with the Indian constitution after extended negotiation. The fourth one was Jammu and Kashmir. There's no question about any kind of secession, any second thoughts about it, etc. The fact that Sheikh Abdullah in 1972, after his prolonged incarceration, when he was to come back and form the government, they entered into an agreement, Sheikh Abdullah and Mrs. Gandhi. And it's interesting because that agreement provided for the fact that there'd be no question of you asking for an abrogation of 370 clause 3. The accession is absolutely complete. No secession arguments can be taken. That's also put on record. It is a special position, and taking it away will clearly be betraying the people of Kashmir. We made our mind clear to India, and I'm glad it was understood by the Indian government. Honorable members of this House have expressed their doubts as regards the residuary powers, etc. Then Dr. Rajendra Prasad's note as President. This is sent to Prime Minister Nehru on 6 September 52. There can be no doubt that Article 370, and particularly Clause 3 thereof, is of an exceptional nature. While it safeguards in Clause 2 the right of the Constituent Assembly of Jammu and Kashmir to revise or annul any action taken by the government of that state in giving concurrence under Clause 1B2 and the second proviso to clause 1T of Article 370. It excludes altogether the Parliament of India from having any say regarding the constitution of Jammu and Kashmir and places full power in the hands of the government, including the power to amend the constitution of India.